Hello. Today, we will be going over the most recent update to my Piggy build mode concepts game. Also, I really appreciate the 644 likes, 390k visits, and 1814 favorites. Thank you guys so much for all the support you have given me. Also, the anniversary of this project, July 11th, is actually coming up really soon. I don't currently have anything planned unfortunately, but I just want to take the time to say that I feel like I was just recording my first particle block showcase video about a month ago. Anyways, enough of that, let's move on to our first concept. The Medora decoration. This is by far the biggest block in the game. You don't get it for free though, smiling face with horns. To unlock this decoration, you must get this badge. The icon is a huge hint, but if you're unfamiliar with most of the concepts in my game, I would recommend watching this whole video to understand some of the assets needed to get this badge. Anyways, I'm going to attempt to make this ship float on water, but in the meantime, shout out to Wennerstrom on YouTube and Miguel62623 on Discord for both suggesting this concept. As you can see, the Medora floats. I would really not recommend using this as anything other than a prop because of collision issues, but it's available for whatever you may need. Next up, we have the Weld decoration from Book 1 Chapter 1. I just realized afterwards that I should have made this an event instead, but technically you already can make it an event using power gates. The only setting that comes with this decoration is whether it shows the bucket or not. Also, I am so sorry if my videos are laggy. I'm working on alternative screen recording systems as well as potentially looking into a new laptop, one that's more suitable for screen recording and just overall playing Roblox and coding in Roblox Studio. But anyways, I'm setting up a linked way to kind of show the bucket. This way, you can recreate the event using an item use trigger and an item spawn block. So, as you can see, it actually does work, but the material texture shifts a little bit unfortunately. Because of this, I'll probably still add the well as an event. For suggesting this concept, shout out to Tamiliatani, Mateus, J2D, Alien_King225, and once again, N0R, Miguel62623. For our next concept, we have the conveyor. This basically works like the conveyor from official Piggy build mode, but it has one setting, speed. Keep in mind that this concept is rotatable, so you can have a slanted conveyor and all of that. Also, shout out to SharkmanThingryShark0766 from my Discord for suggesting the speed setting. Not only can this be used as a conveyor belt, but it can also be used as a bounce pad. By facing it up, if the player jumps onto it, they will boost higher. Of course, you can use the transparency input to make this invisible but still function properly. I'm going to pair it with an artillery pad to make it kind of look like a trampoline, lol. Alright, now on to the next concept, audio links. I know, they're already in the game, but I added some new concepts to go along with them. The first concept is the audio filter gate. This gate puts the audio through a filter. I'm not really a music nerd, so I only know what low pass and high pass filters do, but maybe you can experiment with some of the other features and let me know what they do. Let me start by finding some funky music. I'm also going to enable the Emit Everywhere setting for the audio emitter. Now, for the audio filter gate, I'm going to change the type to a heavy low pass filter, and set the frequency lower. The lower the frequency, the heavier the effect. Now, let's test them. As you could hear, when I enabled the low-pass filter, the audio kinda became muffled, as if you were hearing it from underwater, by strengthening the low frequencies and weakening the high frequencies. This time, since we're using the high-pass filter, it has the opposite effect. Also, just a few seconds ago I mentioned that the low-pass filter makes it feel like you're underwater. That gives me an idea. What if we made it so that when you go underwater, that filter toggles? Let's do it. Alright, so in the water, I'm going to place an advanced touch trigger with the forever setting turned off, and I'm going to link it to the audio filter. Perfect. As you can both see and hear, we get the desired effect. There is a noticeable delay between jumping in the water and actually hearing the audio get filtered, but that's only this screen recording. In-game, the delay is much less noticeable. Anyways, now we're going to move on to the next concept, the echo barrier. First, let me demonstrate this by making the audio significantly louder, by adding a few audio equalizers and turning the gains up. To test the echo barriers, we want the audio emitter to have Emit Everywhere toggled off. Let's just simply place an echo barrier on top of the pool. The echo barriers are the only blocks in the game that audio can actually reflect off of and collide with. However, they do not collide with the player or any physical objects. Echo barriers have a very subtle effect but can be useful for audio design if you want your map to have realistic spatial audio. Our last audio concept for the day is the audio limiter gate. This gate limits the decibel level, loudness, of audio. Let's keep the equalizers and put a limiter after them to test its effect. As you can hear, the audio significantly lowered in volume when the audio limiter was enabled. You can customize the threshold of this gate to allow or restrict more loudness. As you can hear, this time, the volume was lower, just not as significantly as before. Now that we're finished with the audio concepts, let's move on to probably the most useful concept that came out of this update, the multi-weld block. This idea came up when I was talking to a Leaksy case in my Discord server about a way to make a prompt trigger follow a block. I later posted a sneak peek to a preliminary version of the multi-weld block. If you don't want to miss out on any of these sneak peeks, make sure to join the server. Whenever using a weld block, I recommend pairing it with a configure gate with the anchored setting toggled off. Also, if you haven't guessed already, the weld block will weld all the parts that it is linked to together. However, the reason we need the configure gate is because it will only fully function if all of the parts it is linked to are unanchored. Let's test this out using a ball and a prompt trigger. If you want the prompt trigger to be inside of the ball, then you must toggle the setting, require line of sight, off. Now simply link both the weld block and configure gate to both the ball and prompt trigger. Perfect. As you can see, the prompt trigger and ball are pretty much combined, and when they respawn, they're still combined. You may still think, how is this revolutionary, or where would I apply this if I don't want a ball following prompt trigger? And to that I say, oh, just you wait, because the possibilities are crazy with this new concept and it could lead to a bunch of cool maps and builds. Just wait and see how we apply them later in this video. One use for it is making animation of builds a lot easier. For example, take this car decoration right here, I'm going to add fire to it as if it's burning and a ship code panel at the back because why not? Now, let's go ahead and weld all three of these parts together and unanchor the fire in the panel. Let's also set up a simple animate gate system to go with it. Perfect. As you can see, we only animated one part, but since the others were welded to it, they all moved properly. And if you thought the weld block would stop at only object assets, you would be wrong. It also works on players and NPCs. Let's place a cone in the air because it's cool. Let's place a touch trigger right under it. Now here's where things get crazy. If you link the weld block to the touch trigger and the cone, once a player touches that touch trigger, the cone gets welded to them. Beautiful. And as you can see, just as expected, the cone now floats above my head and follows me. I honestly have no idea what you would need this for, but it is cool nonetheless. Does it stop at touch triggers? Absolutely not. Watch how it functions if you link the weld block to an NPC spawn. I would not recommend this because it kind of confuses the NPC a little bit, but once again, it is cool. Just a warning, confusing the bot does not make it any less lethal. One last thing I forgot to mention about the weld block is that it's linkable. If you link a signal to it, the weld will power/unpower depending on the source. Shout out to JDudeVR for this suggestion. Now, on to the next concept, the object touch trigger. The one that I promised when the configure gate came out, as the name suggests, this block only triggers when an object touches it, not players. Let's start with moving a simple unanchored block into it. We can link the object touch trigger to an OR gate to see when the block is activated. And as you can see, when we move the block into the object touch trigger, the OR gate lights up. Now, what if we only want the OR gate to light up for as long as the block is touching the touch trigger? Good thing there's a setting for that. Perfect. The OR gate lights up when the touch trigger is being touched, and it then unpowers when the block is no longer touching it. Hey, one question. Did you think this object touch trigger can only detect unanchored parts? Yes. Well, you're wrong. I'm going to prove that by animating an anchored block into and out of the object touch trigger. And voila! As you can see, as the block temporarily touches the object touch trigger, the OR gate temporarily lights up. The next concept isn't really a concept but more of a configured asset. I changed the dialog block so it's a lot more customizable. For example, instead of using $ open curly bracket name so and so close curly bracket to set a custom name, you could just type in the speaker name. Also, you could set the text color directly. Some of the more advanced settings are speed, time between each letter, and sustain, time after the end before the dialog disappears. Here's a message from me to all of my viewers and players. The next configured asset is the drivable car. It is pretty much just a drivable car, the only setting is whether it requires gas or not. Would you believe me if I told you that you could make a custom car? Let me show you exactly how to do that. First, place a mesh block anywhere. I know I usually redirect you to the mesh block video where I show you how to retrieve a valid mesh ID and texture ID. However, this new method is a lot more accessible and just nicer to do. Open your browser and go to the Creator Marketplace. Find a mesh that you like. Then, right-click on the icon and voila! You can copy the mesh ID and the texture ID, if it has a texture. A lot of my viewers copied the ID from the URL, but that doesn't work because that's the asset ID, not the mesh. Now, just resize this mesh block and customize it to however you like. Place a weld block and connect it to the car and the mesh block. Remember when I said the weld block is revolutionary? This is what I meant. Also place a configure gate and link it to the mesh block. In the settings, disable both the anchored and collidable settings. The next step is repositioning your mesh block into the car so it fits comfortably. The final step is setting the transparency input in the texture menu to 1 and painting the car. This will make the car fully invisible but still function perfectly. And now you can cruise around in your new Dodge Challenger. However, you may need to repair your Dodge Challenger because it may have physics issues. Miss Gaming Online, I know I technically didn't fulfill what you actually asked for, but I hope this is alright. The next asset is the docks puzzle. We've done Piggy events like this in the past so I'm sure you guys are familiar with how this works. We can place 3 docks puzzle hints to give us the code that we need. And of course, why not link the docks puzzle to a player config block to demonstrate that player data transfers with whoever completed the code. Perfect. This concept was suggested by TrickyPhase37, Pig Bankersimes, Mateus, J2D, Mr. Kai 568, Berichmaster06, and Madia Fire Coldface. But wait. There's a setting in this block named, code is random. If I disable that setting, I can actually set which numbers are true for each wheel. And yes, they reflect accurately to the hint events. Not only can you set predetermined codes for the docks puzzle, but also for the other 3 Piggy events that are usually randomly generated. This little setting feature was suggested by Vittenhold123. The next concept was recorded in a separate recording, the advanced if gate. The advanced if gate works similarly to the if gate but it can record multiple players' data instead of just one at a time. I will demonstrate that by making a Squid Game red light green light map. I have a basic looper that determines when the light is green and when it's red. A problem is that I connected the touch trigger directly to it, so if you replicate this system, make sure to put a modify gate in between them. But anyways, I'm going to place an advanced touch trigger in between the 2 pink lines with the forever setting turned off. And now time for the advanced if gate. I'm going to enable the is moving condition and then link the advanced touch trigger to the advanced if gate. Now place an AND gate and link the if gate and the looper to it. Then link the AND gate to a health config block. And boom! You're done with a fully functioning red light green light system. You don't need an if gate for each individual player, you can just use an advanced if gate. I'm going to save this to a slot and then get some of my friends to join me so we can test if it works with multiple players. Shout out to Gogo_Viking, Kairos, Spooke, Unseen Jake, and Craziness for helping me out in getting this footage. Specifically, shout out to Gogo_Viking and Tynosfer for spending over 3 hours with me just fixing a bug with the advanced if gate. But anyways, as you could see, each individual player was tracked to see if they moved during the red light. Once these two made it to the end though, they were safe from death. Because they were no longer touching the advanced touch trigger. Overall, the advanced if gate can simplify systems like this if you use it correctly. On to the next concept. The penultimate concept I will be showing today is a new NPC named Numbra. It was modeled by Hyuray and animated by WEROTOSTY. Now let's try making it significantly faster and significantly bigger. Note that an NPC's hitbox is not proportional to their size. That means their hitbox is still the same size, so it's harder to get caught by one of these folks. Now, for our last concept, we have a new report button. If you come across any inappropriate builds in my game, please do not report my game because that could get it banned. Instead, use the report feature. To help me, and potential future moderators, understand why you are reporting the map, please put as much detail as possible into the description. Also, include screenshots of notable places that show breaking the rules. This feature was suggested by Mario Brothers Scammer 20. Well, that was it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the support you're giving me, and by the way, the custom animation creator is coming out once I reach 710 likes on my game. Again, just thank you for sticking around, and if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it a ton if you left a like on this video and maybe even subscribed. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.